Morning. Right, while I'm washing up, go me, I want to talk a little about one of those most sensitive of topics, both here in the UK, in the US I'm sure, and in most of the Western world at the moment. That's immigration. Specifically when it comes to refugees, or if you want to view it that way, alleged refugees. Yeah, I don't know about in your particular country, but in the UK, the right-wingers will use the argument that a lot of these people who we're letting into the country on refugee status are liars, cheaters, and are just here to take advantage of the system. With some of them, that may well be true. Problem there is if you make the system tough and strict enough so no one can take advantage of it, you also deny those who are in genuine need. There will, unfortunately, always be those who will try to take advantage of any system of benefit, aid. That's the way the world goes. I don't know how it works in the US, but definitely over here, allegedly a lot of MPs take advantage of the expenses system. A lot of recent controversy in the Houses of Parliament in this country is that usually every year, everyone who's over the age of retirement, an OAP, gets a winter heating allowance regardless of their income. So say, let me just pick some, Alan Sugar is just as entitled to it as my mother is, you know. So even though he's a multi-billionaire with loads of houses, loads of assets, he unashamedly was apparently claiming this every year for quite some time. And our new Labour government wants to stop that from happening. But I think the question is where the line is drawn. Anyway, I'm going off topic, but it's another example of how people take advantage of it. Now, I think especially in the UK and Europe, and probably in America too, what we don't seem to have problems with is white Christian refugees from the Ukraine. But as soon as those people are from a different religious and ethnic background, e.g., I'll simplify it by saying brown people, all of a sudden, a lot of people in the UK, they don't like it. Take Trump's recent comments on they eat dogs and cats or whatever. I'm sure they have. I mean, if you've come from somewhere where there's a war going on, you'll eat anything you can find. But, especially in the US, with meat being cheap and plentiful, there's no longer any excuse for that kind of behaviour. So if they're still doing it, they're in the wrong. But I shouldn't imagine this is the case. One thing that has to be done by those who, either through refugee status or simply because they want to emigrate to another country, you have to have a certain respect for the cultural norms of the country you are in. You should be allowed to practice your religion, and providing it doesn't clash with the morals and ethics of the nation you wish to call home or have been forced to call home, then fine. I mean, in this country, we've had a lot of trouble over the years with immigrants from certain countries who do not want their sons and daughters to embrace Western culture. There's even been something called honour killing, where especially daughters, it seems, who wish to embrace Western culture are basically threatened, harassed, and in some cases harmed and even murdered because they wish to embrace Western culture. This is very wrong. Although I do see it to a certain extent because I'm horribly empathetic at times. Say, like, I view a Western person who converts to extreme Islam as wrong. I shouldn't view it like that. It's perhaps an example of my upbringing and age. But then again, the thing is, let me tell you something about the cultural background I came from. I grew up in a small town in Suffolk. Let me see. When it came to, I suppose you'd call it multiculturalism, in my middle school, there was one lad of African descent. There was one lad of Southeast Asian, I think Pakistani or Indian descent. There was a German girl. And I think that was it. And of all the, I would think, 500 or so, because it was quite a small middle school, children at my school, the vast majority were white English. Someone with a vastly different accent was unusual, but it did happen. So I didn't grow up with the kind of pressures of, say, a northern inner city in the UK, where different ethnic groups have formed their own enclaves, etc. Oh. Well, just destroying the kitchen. So my viewpoint is markedly different to that of someone who has grown up in such circumstances. Now, when I was first in Ipswich in the 1990s, there were ethnic groupings. There were the Poles, Portuguese, Caribbean. But I didn't think about it because I'd never experienced what it's like to live within these enclaves of people from foreign countries. So my viewpoint is markedly different, perhaps. Now, my experience in the last 20 years in it, which has had both negative and positive viewpoints. But it still doesn't change my outward belief that civilized countries should be providing places for those less fortunate to seek refuge, even if some of them are playing the system. I thoroughly disagree with some tenets of the extreme Islam. I thoroughly disagree with some of the tenets of extreme Orthodox Judaism. I thoroughly disagree with some of the tenets of Christianity. I tend to thoroughly disagree with any religion that's become dogmatic and says you must do this. Should be a choice, really. That's just my viewpoint. And apparently that will want to be washed up again. So yes. But I do think some of these refugees, especially from war zones, need to be looked after better. I believe that just giving them a weekly allowance, some clothes and a hotel room isn't enough. Many of these people have seen the most dreadful and horrific things in the war-torn countries they have come from, and they need psychological help. We've seen examples in this country, and I'm sure in many other countries you've seen it too, of what happens to people who come here with unresolved post-traumatic stress disorder. They become easy victims for extremism because of what they've seen, and they do things that negatively impact their ethnic group. Because unfortunately human beings have a tendency to tar all with the same brush. It's just the way we are, unfortunately. That is a sad issue, but we should know better. I'm very disappointed in humanity most of the time. I think we should have advanced far beyond where we are. How are we ever going to get to the start when we're still fighting amongst ourselves over different shades, different ethics, different morals? Ah well, not going to solve these issues here, are we? But I just thought I'd give my viewpoint. And oh look, I haven't blown my nose this morning either. I'll do it off camera. Right, that's the washing up done. 1400. That will do. Peace and victory.